Right now, the device you are using to watch this video is executing billions of mathematical calculations every second. But to find the first instance of that capability, we have to travel back to an era long before microchips, electricity, or even the concept of a screen. We have to go to London in 1843. There, a 27-year-old woman translated a technical paper about a massive, gear-driven machine that had not yet been built. While doing so, she wrote down a detailed set of instructions for it, creating what is now recognized as the world's first computer program. Even more astonishingly, she explained exactly how a machine like this could eventually be used to compose intricate pieces of music or render graphics. She was mapping out the boundaries of software a full century before the hardware caught up to her ideas. We usually credit the origin of computing to the engineers who built the physical hardware. But to understand how a box of gears becomes a computer, we have to examine the mind of the first person to conceptualize what that hardware could actually do. The hardware side of this story belongs to Charles Babbage. He was a prominent inventor, obsessed with a highly specific problem. 19th century mathematical reference books, which sea captains and engineers relied on for navigation, were riddled with mistakes. They were calculated by hand, and humans make errors. To eliminate those human mistakes, Babbage designed the difference engine. This was an enormous mechanical calculator built to compute specific mathematical functions with total accuracy, removing the need for manual tallying. While struggling to build it, Babbage designed an even more ambitious device, the analytical engine. This would be a general-purpose machine. It featured a memory bank he called the store and a processing unit he called the mill, and it was designed to be programmed using a sequence of physical punched cards. Babbage had designed a functional computer, yet he remained focused on the immediate utility of his own invention. He viewed the analytical engine strictly as a supreme calculator. He was a builder who saw a tool for math rather than a platform for something more. Ada Lovelace had a highly unusual education for the time. Her father was the poet Lord Byron, a man she never knew. Terrified that Ada might inherit his unpredictable temperament, her mother enforced a strict education centered entirely on mathematics and science. By 1842, Ada was a highly capable mathematician. When an Italian engineer published a paper summarizing Babbage's analytical engine, Ada was commissioned to translate it into English for a British scientific journal. She completed the translation, but she didn't stop there. Ada appended her own thoughts in a section titled simply, Notes by the Translator. Her additions were nearly 3 times longer than the original paper itself. Inside those notes, she included a detailed set of instructions for calculating a sequence of Bernoulli numbers using the analytical engine. She laid out exactly what operations the machine needed to perform and in what exact order. This was a precise sequence of execution rules intended for a machine. It was the moment theoretical math became actionable code, the genesis of computer programming. Writing the first algorithm was a technical feat, but her work also addressed what those gears were actually processing. While Babbage saw a machine that calculated numbers, Ada saw something much broader. She realized that if a machine can manipulate symbols according to an internally programmed rule, those symbols don't have to represent quantities. They are just variables. Dictate the right rules, and those symbols could represent musical pitch or the color spectrum. Uncoupled from basic arithmetic, she argued the engine could compose a symphony or render a graphic. This move, turning the machine into a processor of logic rather than just a processor of sums, is a core logic that defines modern computing. It's why the same hardware that calculates your taxes can also play a video or stream a song. As we sit here in 2026, watching artificial intelligence models generate essays and artwork, the debate over whether machines can actually think is more urgent than ever. Ada Lovelace weighed in on this exact debate in 1843. In what is now called the Lovelace objection, she argued that the analytical engine had no power to originate anything on its own. It could only do exactly what it was instructed to perform. She drew a distinction between a machine's ability to combine symbols in sophisticated, impressive ways and the possession of genuine creativity. A machine can follow rules, but she argued it cannot generate a truly new idea. Decades before a working computer existed, a 27-year-old mathematician mapped out the philosophical limitations of machine intelligence that we are still testing today. Ada Lovelace died of illness at the age of 36. Because Babbage never finished his analytical engine, her code was never run. She died leaving behind ideas for a field that had no name. For decades, the history of science was written by men who focused heavily on Babbage's mechanical work. Lovelace's translation notes remained in the record, but they were often relegated to the margins as a curious footnote. It wasn't until the 1950s that computer pioneers began looking back at those archives. When Alan Turing wrote his landmark paper on machine intelligence, he directly addressed the Lovelace objection, treating her 1843 argument as a serious challenge for the digital brains he was helping to create. History often celebrates the builders who understand how the gears turn, but it is ultimately the visionaries who ask what those gears actually mean that define the future. Ada Lovelace asked what they meant, and a century later, the world finally caught up.